to marry his mistress, by Ruoxue, the genius scientist lauded by the media as the AI queen. My ex-husband, the rising tech star Gu Yanqing, slid a 10 billion yuan check across the table to me. Sign it, and take that product and get out. The icy tone echoed in the spacious and expensive villa. The product he referred to was our 5-year-old son. Gu Yanqing made no attempt to hide his disdain, his gaze assessing me like a defective product. Su Qing, I need a descendant who can inherit my intelligence, not a blockhead like Sun Yan who can't even speak clearly. Ruoxue is the woman who can match me. The child we have will be a true genius. I looked up at Bai Ruoxue beside him. She was elegantly stirring her coffee, looking at me with a pitying yet superior gaze. Ms. Su, the chasm of IQ cannot be bridged. I hope you can understand Yanqing's pursuit of perfect genes. I didn't say anything, turning my gaze to the corner. My son, Sun Yan, was hugging a tablet, his fingers flying across the screen, oblivious to the argument around him. This taciturn demeanor only confirmed Gu Yanqing's theory of his slowness. I couldn't help but find it a bit amusing. Slow? He could independently code at 3 years old, hacked into the kindergarten's access control system, and moved the dismissal time forward by an hour. At 5 years old, because Gu Yanqing forgot my birthday, he angrily changed his company's new product launch PPT to our wedding photos during the global livestream, with "Breaking Up Happily" as the background music. Gu Yanqing's technical department investigated this incident for half a year, eventually attributing it to malicious provocation by foreign hacker organizations. I pulled myself back to reality, picked up the expensive pen, and neatly signed my name on the divorce agreement. Su Qing. Without a moment's hesitation. This overly calm composure made Gu Yanqing frown. He seemed to expect to see my collapse or begging, but I gave him nothing. He wanted to see a show, but I refused to perform. I stood up, walked to my son, and took his small hand. Sun Yan finally looked up from his tablet. He glanced at Gu Yanqing and Bai Ruoxue, then typed a line of text on the screen and held it up. Bye-bye, Mr. Gu. Mr. Gu. Not Dad. Gu Yanqing didn't see the hint of indifference and mockery, not belonging to his age, that flashed across his son's tender face. Stepping out of the villa's front door, the cold air rushed into my lungs, but I felt no regret. I took Sun Yan and hailed a taxi straight to the household registration center. The clerk looked at the materials I submitted and asked with some surprise, "Are you sure you want to change the child's surname? From the father's surname to the mother's surname?" "Yes, I'm sure." When the brand new household registration booklet was handed to me, and the words Gu Nian had become Sun Yan, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. Nian was my Nian, and no longer had anything to do with the Gu family. Subsequently, I used a small fraction of that $10 million check to buy a top-floor apartment with a state-of-the-art security system in another city renowned for its tech industry. Then, I made an encrypted call and ordered several of the highest performance servers and workstations available on the market. They asked me what my requirements were, and I simply said, "Make it fast." On my first day in the new home, I looked out of the huge floor-to-ceiling windows at an unfamiliar cityscape. The house was empty of furniture, except for me, Sun Yan, and the newly installed, softly humming servers. Sun Yan was already eager to connect his tablet to the new network and begin building his own little world. I sat in front of another computer, took a deep breath, and hovered my fingertips over the keyboard for a moment before typing a string of long-forgotten commands. A login screen appeared, and I entered the alias that once astonished the entire Silicon Valley. Q. A line of green characters lit up on the dark screen. "Welcome back, Q." The corners of my mouth lifted slightly, and a light rekindled in my eyes. "Gu Yanqing, you thought you bought my past for 10 million, humiliating my son. You don't know that you just used that money to restart 2 completely different lives, for yourself and for me. And yours is destined to be downhill." Less than a week after I left, Gu Yanqing and Bai Ruoxue announced their engagement in high profile. Financial news and entertainment headlines were plastered everywhere, praising them as a powerful alliance, a combination of geniuses, and some media even described it as a perfect collision of genes. I turned off the news feed and looked at our new, tech fortress-like smart home, feeling a bit of irony. Gu Yanqing probably thought Sun Yan and I were crammed into some old neighborhood, worrying about making a living. I logged into that long-dormant dark web account, Q. As soon as I went online, the encrypted mailbox was filled with top-tier commissions from around the world. I picked the highest-paying task, designing the underlying firewall for the security system of a certain European royal family. The advance payment alone far exceeded the severance Gu Yanqing gave me. He never truly understood my world. Sun Yan also quickly adapted to the new life. He thought the traffic light algorithm at the intersection downstairs was stupid, causing traffic jams during rush hour. So, he sat on the balcony with his tablet for half an hour and rewrote the scheduling logic of the traffic system in the area. The next day, the property management group in the neighborhood was marveling that the evening rush hour ended half an hour earlier. In the evening, I typed a line of code on the terminal and sent it to him, function dinner, return? Soon, he returned a small program, the result of which popped up a word on the screen, pizza. This is how my son and I communicate, simple, efficient, and incomprehensible to outsiders. When Gu Yanqing's assistant called, Sun Yan and I were sharing a Hawaiian pizza. The voice on the phone was formal and laced with a hint of condescension. President Gu is concerned about you and the child. He heard you're currently unemployed and struggling financially. President Gu said if you have any difficulties. I interrupted him, tell Gu Yanqing we're doing fine. After hanging up, I saw Sun Yan staring at the promotional ad for Gu's Tech's latest smartwatch, his little brow furrowed. He muttered, the UI design is too ugly. I didn't pay attention and went to the kitchen to get a drink. When I came back, Sun Yan had already put down the tablet. The next day, there were problems with the promotional images on Gu's Tech's official website and all online channels. A bright, gaudy little red flower had been photoshopped onto that smartwatch, which was touted as having a minimalist design and a sense of technological beauty. Gu's Tech team was in a frenzy, working all night to fix it. They ultimately classified the incident as a malicious commercial attack by competitors, never suspecting a 5-year-old. Gu Yanqing was furious and reprimanded his proud tech department as useless during an internal meeting. I looked at Sun Yan, who was focused on building a new program model. I opened a web page with the registration announcement for the International Youth Programming Competition. I pointed at the screen and asked him, "Want to go play?" Sun Yan's eyes lit up instantly, and he nodded emphatically. The day the preliminary results of the International Youth Programming Competition came out, I was processing an encrypted order from the Middle East. Sun Yan walked over with his tablet and showed me the screen. His code name S was ranked first, followed by a long string of opponents with 0 scores. The judges' comments section on the web page was lively. This code is written like a poem, concise, efficient, yet with an arrogance that scorns everything. I suspect some retired big shot is here to fish. Checked the IP address, it's clean. The registration information says it's a child. A prank, maybe? Whoever it is, I bet they'll make it to the finals. I smiled and touched Sun Yan's head. Having fun? He nodded and went back to studying his opponent's information for the finals. At the same time, Gu Yanqing and Bai Ruoshua's careers were soaring. His company's stock price was skyrocketing due to the upcoming launch of the Sky Shield security system. Bai Ruoshua, as the mother of Sky Shield, became a darling of the tech world and the media. I saw her interview on the Financial Channel. Dressed in haute couture with exquisite makeup, she spoke eloquently into the camera. The core of Sky Shield is true artificial intelligence. It can predict and evolve. This is an era for creators, not like some women of the old era who only knew how to rely on and give birth, ultimately being abandoned by the times. The camera panned across the huge engagement diamond on her ring finger, full of irony. Online, S's reputation grew louder and louder. This mysterious teenage genius swept through all the promotion matches with a crushing posture, easily entering the finals. Online forums were opening bets on S's true identity, with some guessing he was a genius secretly cultivated by Silicon Valley giants, and others guessing he was a secret weapon of a national cybersecurity department. Bai Ruoshua was asked about this at a technology salon, and she smiled contemptuously. Just some childish tricks, trying to gain attention. Real technology is about changing the world, like Sky Shield. That night, Sun Yan suddenly looked up at me, his little face full of confusion. "Mom, why does this Sky Shield system have such a big vulnerability?" I leaned over to look, and his tablet was displaying the open source code of Sky Shield. His little finger pointed to a section. "Here, a very clever logical backdoor. The person who designed it is very smart, but also very stupid." Before I could speak, I saw him type a few times on the keyboard. "What are you doing?" "Send her an email," Sun Yan said casually, reminding her to be serious when writing her thesis. I was stunned. At that moment, in the most luxurious apartment in the city, Bai Ruoxue was enjoying wine and praise. Her phone pinged with a notification of an anonymous encrypted email. She casually opened it, finding no threats, no viruses, just a geographical coordinate. She subconsciously entered the coordinate on the map, and the screen popped up with a link to the original source of a core algorithm that she had cleverly stolen and disguised in her doctoral thesis. The end of the email only contained one line of signature: "A kid passing by." The wine glass in Bai Ruoxue's hand crashed to the ground, and the red wine spread like blood. Her face turned pale, and she frantically tried to trace the source of the email, but the screen only returned a cold prompt: "Source cannot be traced." That email, like an invisible needle, pierced through the gorgeous coat she had built with lies, hitting the deepest, most unbearable fear in her heart. The venue for the International Youth Programming Competition Finals was brightly lit, and the globally broadcast cameras slowly moved around the arena, capturing every excited or nervous face. I sat in an inconspicuous corner of the audience, watching Gu Yanqing and Bai Ruoxue in the front row. They were impeccably dressed, seemingly the masters of this grand event. The live broadcast camera appropriately focused on Gu Yanqing, who, as a special guest, was talking eloquently into the microphone. "I am very gratified to see so many young geniuses." He smiled, but his tone revealed a condescending instruction. "But the real genius is able to create world-changing products like Sky Shield, not stay in small-scale competitions." Bai Ruoxue nodded in agreement beside him, her eyes sweeping across the arena with a hint of imperceptible disdain. It was the turn of the contestant codenamed S to take the stage. Gu Yanqing's smile froze on his face as a slender boy in a custom suit walked onto the stage. He rubbed his eyes subconsciously, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Next, let's welcome the dark horse of this competition, the only 6-year-old contestant S. Sun Yan." The host's voice was full of drama. The audience erupted in an uproar, followed by incredulous chatter. The live broadcast's bullet comments instantly flooded with 6 years old. "Are you kidding me? Whose kid wandered onto the wrong set?" I saw Gu Yanqing's body stiffen, exuding an icy aura. The ultimate challenge for the final was announced: a live attack on the virtual server protected by the Sky Shield system provided by the competition's partner, Gu's Technology. Bai Ruoxue's lips curled into a confident smile. This was her home turf, the masterpiece she was so proud of. She didn't believe a 6-year-old could do anything. Sun Yan walked to the console, his small body almost swallowed by the equipment. He adjusted the height of the chair, his little hands tapping on the keyboard. There were no extra movements, only his fingertips dancing. Before anyone could fully react, the solid firewall representing the Sky Shield system on the large screen suddenly filled with spiderweb-like cracks, and in the next second, it collapsed with a bang. Time shown, 28 seconds. The entire venue was silent. Sun Yan didn't stop. He obtained the highest authority, but didn't display a single line of dry code. Instead, he projected a photo onto the global live broadcast screen. It was a photo of me holding him as a baby, smiling with tenderness. Below the photo, there was a line of words he had typed himself: "Mom, I am your best work." Gu Yanqing's face was ashen, and Bai Ruoxue was unsteady, her body swaying. Just then, the live broadcast camera captured me in the audience. Flashes instantly surrounded me, and reporters swarmed forward. A gray-haired senior tech reporter squeezed to the front, staring intently at my face, then at Sun Yan on stage, suddenly exclaiming in a broken voice, "My God! I remember! Sun Yan. Su Qing. Q. She's Q." The legendary programmer Q who single-handedly dismantled the Hades virus 10 years ago. The name Q exploded like a bomb in the crowd. The entire internet was completely boiling. I met countless shocked gazes and calmly looked at the stage. Gu Yanqing looked over in horror, the color draining from his face. He finally understood that he had abandoned not an ordinary woman and a slow-witted son, but the two most brilliant geniuses of this era. His proud elite gene theory had, in that moment, become a huge joke. The letter Q detonated a silent nuclear explosion in the quiet venue. Flashes instantly engulfed me, reporters squeezed forward like madmen, and countless microphones almost poked my face. MS. Sue. Are you really Q? What's the untold story behind your marriage with President Gu? Did you personally cultivate Sun Yan's talent? Instinctively, I pulled Sun Yan behind me, using my body to shield him from the surging crowd. He, however, was very calm, merely peeking his little head out from behind me, curiously observing the emotionally charged adults, and then tugging at my clothes. I looked down at him. He tilted his face up, his eyes clear and bright, without a trace of panic in them. My gaze went past the crowd, landing on the front row. Gu Yanqing stood there, his face ashen, his body rigid, his lips slightly parted as if wanting to say something, but unable to utter a sound. Bai Ruoxue beside him had completely lost it, grabbing his arm and muttering incessantly, "Impossible. This is impossible." The security guards at the venue finally reacted, rushing over to form a circle, painstakingly clearing a path for us. I protected Sun Yan, walking out without a word. "Q. Will you be returning?" A reporter broke through the encirclement, holding a recording pen to my mouth. I stopped, my gaze piercing through the lens, and calmly stated, "I never left. I was just busy with a more important project." Having said that, I took Sun Yan's hand and disappeared into the bright light of the exit. As we sat in the car, my phone vibrated like a hot brick. I immediately muted it. Sun Yan had already opened his tablet, his little fingers swiping across the screen. After a moment, he held the tablet up to me. On the screen were the trending topics on various social media platforms. Without exception, the top one was, "Legendary programmer Q is actually Gu Yanqing's ex-wife." Closely following were the entries, "6-year-old genius breaks Tiandun system in 28 seconds, Gu Yanqing's elite gene theory becomes a joke, AI queen's persona crumbles." The comments section had completely exploded. Let me break it down for everyone. President Gu dumped the legendary programmer Q, who had been honing her skills for a decade, for the AI queen, and said that Q's son was slow. As a result, this slow son took down his new love's masterpiece in a global broadcast. What a year for black humor. To add to the above, President Gu gave a 10 billion yuan breakup fee. That's like spending 10 billion to hire someone to sabotage your own event. This operation, I'd call it a business genius. So President Gu spent all that time selecting, only to throw away 2 royal flushes? Did he buy his gene selector on Pinduoduo? Sun Yan swiped the screen again, and a crudely made GIF popped up. On the left was Gu Yanqing's arrogant demeanor when he was interviewed, spouting his gene theory, and on the right was the scene of the Tiandun firewall collapsing, with a line of large characters in the middle, "Worst investment vision of the year." Sun Yan looked at the picture, the corners of his mouth turning up, and he let out a very soft chuckle. I opened the financial software. Next to Gu's technology's stock code, there was a glaring red color. The stock opened and immediately hit the daily limit down, evaporating billions in market value in an instant. The news headlines below were alarming. Tiandun myth shattered, Gu's technology faces the biggest trust crisis in history. The phone screen lit up, displaying the name Gu Yanqing. I stared at the name, and before I could react, Sun Yan snatched the phone from my hand. His small fingers tapped the screen twice, decisively adding the number to the blacklist. He handed the phone back to me and typed a line on his tablet, "Junk messages will affect the phone's operating speed." After the farce at the finals, the online frenzy had only just begun. Bai Ruoxue locked herself in her apartment, dialing frantically, but the public relations team leader, who used to fawn over her, now only said in a tired voice, "MS. We can't suppress it. All the servers are about to be overwhelmed by the traffic. The opponent is Q, what can we do? Useless. Ruoshua screamed, throwing her phone. Reluctantly, she opened a top programmer forum to see which way the wind was blowing. The top post was titled, Technical Analysis, the possibility of breaking through Sky Shield in 28 seconds. Clicking in, the author deconstructed Sun Yan's attack path line by line with code, finally pointing out the logical backdoor he called a work of art. This backdoor is designed so ingeniously. Normally, it looks like a security redundancy, but as long as you get a specific initial key, the entire system is an indefensible backyard. Interestingly, the generation logic of this key is 90% similar to a discarded draft of Q's masterpiece Athena's Shield from 10 years ago. Someone immediately commented below, damn, I thought Sky Shield's underlying architecture looked familiar. So, they didn't even copy the homework correctly? It's more than just copying, it's like Dongshi imitating Shishir. Q's design is an integrated defense and offense, but she's made a clumsy imitation and left herself a self-destruct button. LOL, so the AI queen is actually a code seamstress? Even more fatal, someone followed this line and dug up Ruoshua's doctoral dissertation that made her famous. The core algorithm in her paper was revealed to be almost identical to a concept Q published in a geek community early on, only with some flashy embellishments. The coordinates that Sun Yan had previously anonymously sent to her were now made public, becoming irrefutable proof to nail her down. The past praise turned into a tidal wave of ridicule. Every highlight in her academic career was scrutinized under a microscope and then proven to be stolen or exaggerated. The doorbell rang violently. Gu Yanqing stood outside the door, his face ashen, his eyes bloodshot. The haute couture suit he wore was crumpled, devoid of its former elegance. Ruoshua, the company's board of directors wants an explanation. His voice was hoarse, without a trace of warmth. Yanqing! It's Su Qing! She framed me. Ruoshua grabbed his arm, as if clutching at the last straw. She's jealous of me, she can't stand to see us happy. Gu Yanqing looked at her with unfamiliar eyes. Slowly, he pried her fingers apart, one by one. I'm not asking about Su Qing. He pulled a document from his briefcase and slammed it on the desk. This is a report produced overnight by the company's technology department. 37% of the core code of the Sky Shield system has a clear open-source origin. And 20% is the part whose principles even your own team members can't explain. He paused, saying each word carefully, Ruoshua, the Sky Shield you're so proud of is a bomb you planted yourself. Now, it's exploded. Ruoshua felt the blood drain from her body. She collapsed onto the floor, her lips trembling, unable to utter a word. She thought she had packaged everything perfectly, but she forgot that in this industry, code doesn't lie. The next day, Goose Technology's official website released a statement. The statement said that the company would establish a special investigation team to thoroughly investigate all technical issues of the Sky Shield system project, and effective immediately, suspend Ruoshua from all positions in the company. The wording was official and calm, but it was tantamount to announcing to the world that they had personally torn apart the glamorous painted skin of the AI queen they had placed on the altar. Goose Technology's stock price fell to the daily limit for 3 consecutive days. In Gu Yanqing's office, the ashtray was already full, and the air was filled with a restless smell. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at the K-line on the computer screen, which was plummeting like a cliff. In his ears were the angry roars of the board members on the phone. Yanqing! The market no longer trusts us. They don't trust Sky Shield, and they don't trust Ruoshua. You must cut ties with her immediately, or the entire company will be dragged down with you. Cut ties? Gu Yanqing hung up the phone irritably and threw it aside. The office door was pushed open, and Ruoshua walked in. She had removed all her exquisite makeup, her face was pale, and her eyes were red and swollen, looking pitiful. This was a weapon that had worked for her time and time again. But now, Gu Yanqing only felt disgusted when he saw this face. What are you doing here? His voice was hoarse, without a trace of warmth. Do you think I'm not annoyed enough? Bai Ruoxue didn't speak, but walked to the desk and gently pushed a folded piece of paper in front of him. Gu Yanqing opened it impatiently. It was a hospital pregnancy test report. The word positive was like a red-hot brand, searing into his pupils. Bai Ruoxue's voice carried a deliberate softness and a desperate tremor. Yanqing, I'm pregnant, 8 weeks. It's our child. Gu Yanqing stared at the report, saying nothing. The office was deathly silent, with only his increasingly heavy breathing. A child. He abandoned Su Qing and Sun Yan for a child with so-called superior genes. He put Bai Ruoxue on a pedestal, telling the world that this was the partner he wanted, capable of conceiving a genius. Now, this woman who has been exposed as a liar is pregnant with his child. He could almost see the headlines tomorrow. Gu's president caught in affair with academic fraud, secret pregnancy, the culmination of elite gene theory turns out to be the child of lies. The gene theory he once used to attack Su Qing had now become a boomerang, hitting him squarely between the eyes. This is our hope. Bai Ruoxue tried to take his hand, her eyes brimming with tears. Yanqing, we can turn things around with this child. Tell them, our child is the real genius. Gu Yanqing abruptly pulled his hand away, looking at her tear-streaked face, suddenly finding it utterly ridiculous. He even laughed, his shoulders shaking. He was laughing at himself, like a complete fool. He leaned back in his large executive chair, closed his eyes, and felt all the strength drain from his body in an instant. This pregnancy report was not hope. It was the last chain locking him down, dragging him into the abyss. It was a life sentence he had personally pronounced upon himself. At the same time, in a penthouse apartment on the other side of the city, I had just finished a multinational video conference, finalizing the cooperation on the next-generation network security protocol. Sun Yan was wearing a pair of children's headphones, intently composing background music for a new little game he was designing, occasionally swaying his little head to the rhythm. My lawyer called, with a hint of schadenfreude in his voice. Miss Su, let me tell you some gossip. Bai Ruoxue is pregnant, and Gu Yanqing is in a terrible state. They say he's locked himself in his office all day. I hemmed and looked out the window. The sun was shining, illuminating Sun Yan's earnest profile, his fine hairs clearly visible. Got it. I hung up the phone and walked over to Sun Yan, watching the notes dance across his screen. Mom, listen. Sun Yan handed me one of the headphones. I put it on, and inside was a light and playful melody, like the wind running in the sunlight. My world was bright and sunny. The news of Bai Ruoxue's pregnancy eventually came to light. Not through an official statement, but through a revelation from an entertainment gossip Big V, accompanied by a photo of Bai Ruoxue at the entrance of a private obstetrics and gynecology hospital, her hand instinctively protecting her lower abdomen. The headline was sensational: AI Queen's desperate counterattack? Gu's president may be forced to marry. This news was like a drop of oil falling into a hot pan, instantly igniting the already boiling public opinion. Am I seeing this right? Academic fraud, and now this kind of high society drama? Congratulations to President Gu, you've acquired a lie-making machine, with a limited edition plagiarism offspring as a bonus. Will this child be able to just copy and paste when writing essays in the future? Don't be so mean. But I laughed. President Gu's gene filter is even fooling himself now. Gu's Technology's stock price responded by opening its fourth consecutive limit down. The board of directors urgently convened a video conference, and every face on the screen was so gloomy it could drip water. Leading the board, Director Zhang was Gu Yanqing's mentor and a company veteran. He took off his glasses, slowly wiping them, his voice calm but leaving no room for argument. Yanqing, you are now a liability to the company. Gu Yanqing opened his mouth, his throat dry. Uncle Zhang, I can handle this. Handle? How? Another director interrupted him directly. Marry an academic fraud and then tell shareholders her child will save the company's stock price? What do you take the market for? The board has unanimously decided. Director Zhang put on his glasses and looked at him. Effective immediately, your position as CEO is suspended, temporarily replaced by Vice President Liang. You need to take a vacation and properly handle your personal affairs. The words personal affairs were emphasized heavily. The video was unilaterally cut off, and Gu Yanqing sat for a long time, staring at the row of black screens. When he returned home, the old Gu family mansion was brightly lit. His father, the refined businessman who had always been proud of him, was sitting in the main seat in the living room, a string of prayer beads in his hand, his face ashen. Dad. Gu's father didn't look at him, but threw a newspaper at his feet, the front page headline featuring by Ruoshua's photo. You've utterly disgraced the Gu family. He finally spoke, his voice suppressing his anger. Back then, you insisted on getting a divorce, talking about genes, talking about the future. And now? You've risked your career and the family's reputation for a fraud. Gu Yanqing's mother wiped away tears beside him. Yanqing, what possessed you back then that you had to make things difficult for Su Qing? She was well behaved, and Yan Yan, though quiet, is still your own flesh and blood. What's the use of saying all this now? Gu's father slammed the table. Issue a statement tomorrow, severing all ties with that woman. We can't have that child either. Gu Yanqing's body shuddered, and he looked up, his eyes empty. Dad, she won't agree. Then sue her. Sue her for fraud. Gu Yanqing didn't speak anymore. He knew it was all too late. Bai Ruoshue had become an indelible patch of dog skin plaster on him, and he had applied that plaster himself. He walked out of the old mansion in a daze and returned to the villa where he and Su Qing had once lived. It was empty, cold, and devoid of life. He walked to the wine cabinet, took out a bottle of whiskey, and without pouring it into a glass, drank straight from the bottle. The spicy liquid burned his throat, but it couldn't numb his chaotic nerves. He suddenly thought of Su Qing. He remembered how she always managed to keep the house tidy, how she handed him a glass of warm water after he was drunk, and how her eyes used to look at him, once filled with light. He took out his phone, his fingers trembling, and found that familiar number from memory. Dialing. No expected ringtone came from the receiver, only a cold system prompt. Sorry, the user you dialed is currently on another call. He was stunned for a moment, then realized what had happened. He wasn't just on hold, he had been blacklisted. Gu Yanqing collapsed onto the sofa, his phone slipping from his hand and falling onto the carpet. The screen lit up, reflecting his pale face. He looked around the priceless mansion and suddenly realized that besides himself, nothing was left. His world, at that moment, completely collapsed. I saw Gu Yanqing again in the lobby of my apartment building. Sun Yan and I had just returned from outside, and he was holding a newly bought model of the planets, explaining the formation of the asteroid belt to me. Gu Yanqing stood outside the revolving door, like a haggard statue. He had lost a lot of weight in just a few days, his eyes were sunken, and his chin was covered in a stubble of beard. The expensive suit he was wearing was also wrinkled, as if he had been wearing it for days. When he saw us, a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes, and he rushed over, only to be stopped by the dutiful security guard at the door. Su Qing! He shouted through the glass door, his voice hoarse. I stopped and pulled Sun Yan behind me. The security guard saw me stop and asked hesitantly, MS. Su, this gentleman says he's your... I don't know him, I interrupted him directly. Gu Yanqing's face turned pale instantly. He pounded on the glass, causing people in the lobby to turn their heads. Qing Qing! It's me! Yanqing! Let me in, let's talk. I ignored him and took Sun Yan to go upstairs. Su Qing! He suddenly shouted outside, I know I was wrong. I know everything. You are cute, Nian Nian is a genius, it's all my fault. I was blind. Forgive me once, let's start over, for the sake of the child. His voice was tearful, almost a roar at the end. I finally turned around and looked at him coldly. He seemed to see hope and began to confess incoherently, scolding Bai Ruoshue and analyzing his own stupidity. Seeing that I remained unmoved, he made a move that shocked everyone. His knees buckled, and he knelt straight down in front of that clean glass door, looking up at me with red eyes. A man who had been at the top of the pyramid not long ago was now kneeling on the ground in the most humble posture, looking up at me, his eyes red. Ching ching, please. Before I could speak, the corner of my clothes was gently tugged. Sun Yan held up his tablet, which showed a garbage sorting game interface that he had created himself. A cartoon character was standing in front of 4 trash cans, with Gu Yanqing's head on top of the character. In the center of the screen, a prompt box popped up in red, bold font, warning, undetectable, unrecyclable, harmful, and oversized waste detected. It is recommended to contact professional personnel for harmless treatment. Do not discard it at will to avoid environmental pollution. I looked at the words and almost couldn't help but laugh. I looked away, took one last look at Gu Yanqing kneeling outside the door, and said to the security guard beside me, "Please take care of this. He's affecting the building's image." With that, I took Sun Yan's hand and walked into the elevator without looking back. Just before the elevator doors closed, I heard Sun Yan whisper, "Mom, his behavioral logic is so strange. There's no match in the database." I patted his head and said, "Because some things, from the moment they're thrown away, lose their value in being analyzed." After I returned to the public eye as Q, life became less peaceful. After rejecting countless interviews and collaboration invitations, an email successfully caught my attention. It came from an encrypted channel, and the sender was Lu Huanhuan. This name carried significant weight in the venture capital and technology circles. The founder of Qinxing Capital, a double Ph.D. from Harvard and MIT, was known for his sharp vision and decisive actions, having invested in more unicorn companies than Gu Yanqing had ever seen. More importantly, it was rumored that he himself was a top programmer. The email content was simple, without unnecessary pleasantries. MS. Sue, apologies for the intrusion. I've recently been researching a model for a distributed trust network and have encountered some bottlenecks. I'd like to consult the designer of Athena's shield. I wonder if it would be convenient to meet. He directly mentioned Athena's shield, my magnum opus from 10 years ago, instead of blindly following the trend and mentioning Q. This piqued my interest a little. I arranged to meet him at a private tea house. Lu Huanhuan looked even younger than in the photos in financial magazines. He wore gold-rimmed glasses and had a gentle demeanor, but his eyes were sharp. When he saw Sun Yan beside me, he didn't show the slightest surprise, but simply smiled at him naturally. After we sat down, he didn't talk about investment or cooperation, but directly pulled up a complex architectural diagram on the tablet he had brought with him. Here, he pointed to one of the nodes. "I've always believed that if you change the trigger weight of this redundant verification logic you designed back then, you might be able to increase security by an order of magnitude, even at the cost of 3% efficiency. What do you think?" We talked for an entire afternoon, from distributed networks to quantum computing, to the ethical boundaries of artificial intelligence. He was quick-witted and insightful, and conversing with him was a pleasure, not an obligation. In the middle of our conversation, Sun Yan suddenly pushed his tablet in front of Lu Huanhuan, showing him a small program he had just written. Lu Huanhuan wasn't impatient, but instead, he read it very carefully. He pondered for a moment and then said to Sun Yan, "Your idea is very interesting, using a reverse algorithm to disguise the data. However, if you add a timestamp variable here, its concealment will be even stronger." Sun Yan glanced at him, took back the tablet, and his little fingers flew across it, making quick modifications. After a while, he looked up and nodded at Lu Huanhuan. This was his highest form of recognition. As we parted, Lu Huanhuan said to me, "Ms. Su, your talent shouldn't be used solely for a more important project. It is itself one of the most important projects. This era needs you." His gaze fell on Sun Yan as he added, "And it needs him too." On the way home, Sun Yan suddenly spoke, "Mom, I checked." "Checked what?" "His firewall is military grade. It took me 2 minutes and 58 seconds to get in." Sun Yan's tone was calm. "His personal assets are 3 times Mr. Gu's. He has no bad habits and no complicated relationship history. Overall score, 89. I was amused by him, Why did you deduct 11 points? Because he wants to pursue you. Sun Yan added with a serious face, this will take up some of my time. At the same time, Gu Yanqing, who was suspended at home, was following the company's movements through financial news. He refreshed the web page, and suddenly a report on a technology salon popped up. In the photo, Liu Qinyuan was talking to me, his body turned to the side. Sun Yan was sitting between us. The three of us were looking down at a tablet, our expressions focused. The title of the photo was, Qinxin Capital founder Liu Qinyuan and legendary programmer Q explore the future of AI together. The coffee cup in Gu Yanqing's hand slipped and fell on the expensive carpet, the dark brown liquid spreading rapidly. He stared intently at the photo. The three people in the photo looked like an inseparable whole, a world he had never touched and was no longer qualified to enter. For the first time, he clearly realized that Su Qing's world really didn't need him anymore. The Global Technology Summit led by Qinxin Capital was packed. Liu Qinyuan didn't choose to sit at the main table but, like ordinary audience members, sat in the center of the front row, waiting quietly. In the shadows at the back of the venue, a figure quietly sat down. It was Gu Yanqing. He wore a hat and mask, wrapping himself up tightly like a fugitive who couldn't be seen, coming to witness his own judgment. The lights dimmed, and a spotlight shone on the center of the stage. I walked up, without any extra opening remarks. The large screen behind me lit up, displaying only 2 words, revelation. The AI of the past was a tool, an imitation, a calculation based on massive amounts of data. My voice spread throughout the venue through the microphone, clear and calm. Today, we want to explore another possibility. We didn't invent a new artificial intelligence, we simply taught it how to have imagination. A slight commotion arose from the audience. Now, please welcome the chief architect of the revelation system, Sun Yan. As soon as I finished speaking, Sun Yan, wearing the same dark blue suit as me, walked out from backstage holding his tablet. He stood beside me and bowed to the audience with a blank expression. The audience was silent for a moment, then erupted in a buzzing discussion. I ignored them and cut straight to the chase, live demonstration. Is there anything you all would like inspiration to create? A reporter in the front row boldly shouted, design a security system safer than Sky Shield. The question was full of provocation. Sun Yan typed a few words on the tablet. On the large screen, countless streams of code poured down like a waterfall, eventually converging into a complete, sophisticated, three-dimensional defense system architecture with self-evolving capabilities. An automatically generated 30-page vulnerability analysis report was also displayed, targeting all mainstream security products on the market, including Sky Shield. The entire process took 17 seconds. A knowledgeable technical expert in the audience gasped, muttering, "This is a dimensional reduction attack." In the corner, Gu Yanqing clenched his fists so tightly that he didn't even feel his nails digging into his palms. Sun Yan seemed to think that wasn't enough. He looked up at me and entered another line of instructions on the tablet, compose a lullaby for my mom based on her current emotional fluctuations. The next second, a never-before-heard piano piece, gentle yet full of power, flowed slowly from the venue's speakers. The melody was soothing, yet carried a hint of cosmic vastness. I looked at Sun Yan. He was looking up at me, his eyes filled with pure trust. I spoke softly into the microphone, adding, Inspiration's core algorithm is derived from the emotional connection model in parent-child relationships. The imagination it possesses is, in essence, a form of love. The entire audience stood up, applauding thunderously. Gu Yanqing couldn't sit still any longer. He saw Liu Qinyuan walk onto the stage, not to steal any of the limelight, but simply to naturally hand me a bottle of water, and then bend down and offer his fist to Sun Yan. Sun Yan looked at him, then extended his own small fist and gently bumped it against his. That scene was blindingly harmonious. Gu Yanqing staggered to his feet, knocked over his chair, and fled the venue, utterly distraught. The gene theory and elitism he had always held sacred were shattered at that moment. What he lost was not just a company, an era, but his most fundamental understanding of the world. In the backstage lounge, Lu Qinyuan handed Sun Yan a bottle of juice that he often drank. Sun Yan took it, drank some, and then looked up at Lu Qinyuan and said, "Revise the score. 92 points. I was curious, why the extra points? Sun Yan replied with a serious face, "The juice brand he chose is my optimal choice in the database." This shows that his data analysis and execution skills are very strong. In the 48 hours after the press conference, the inspiration system became the sole topic of discussion in the global technology world. Major giants scrambled to extend olive branches, with valuations reaching absurd levels, and the media used ushering in a new era to describe the evening's press conference. In contrast, Goose Technologies stock continued its downward spiral, unsurprisingly hitting the daily limit down after the announcement of the CEO's suspension. It was eventually specially treated by the stock exchange, with an ST prefix added to its stock abbreviation. Gu Yanqing's name had fallen from the altar of business success to become the year's biggest joke. As I turned off the financial news, Bai Ruoshua's name flashed across the screen. The report stated that she had attempted to use the child in her womb as leverage to demand exorbitant alimony from the Gu family, but Gu's father directly rejected her with a lawyer's letter and countersued her for commercial fraud, making it a widely known scandal. None of this concerned me anymore. Sun Yan and I were in the laboratory on the top floor of Qinxing Capital. Lu Qinyuan had provided us with the best equipment and the most freedom. The computing redundancy of the new version of Revelation can be further optimized by 5%, Lu Qinyuan said, pointing to the data stream on the holographic projection and turning to ask for my opinion. Before I could speak, Sun Yan had already pushed his tablet over, which contained a brand new optimization algorithm. Lu Qinyuan read it and smiled. "I take back what I just said." He naturally took a bottle of juice from the nearby refrigerator, twisted off the cap, and handed it to Sun Yan, then said to me, "There's a symposium on children's cognitive science next week, and the organizers would like to invite you and Sun Yan." Sun Yan drank his juice, not even looking up as he typed a line on his tablet and held it up for us to see. "Mr. Lu's schedule compatibility analysis, 93%. Conclusion, can accompany." I was about to say something when an unfamiliar number called. I answered, and a voice I had almost forgotten came through the receiver. "Su Qing." It was Gu Yanqing. His voice was hoarse, dry, and carried a kind of exhaustion after being completely drained. "What is it?" My tone was calm. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, so long that I thought he had hung up. "I want to see Nian Nian, just once. I won't bother you, just downstairs, a distant glance will do." He no longer mentioned reconciliation or forgiveness, only this humble request remained. I looked at Sun Yan, who was focused on modifying his code. Half an hour later, at the cafe downstairs from the apartment. Gu Yanqing sat across from me, wearing an ordinary jacket, his eyes sunken, his whole person as if his energy had been drained, and he no longer resembled his former self in the slightest. "The company is gone, the board kicked me out. The house is also being prepared for auction," he said in a low voice, as if he were describing someone else's affairs. "My dad wants me to go abroad, to stop embarrassing myself in the country." He raised his head, his bloodshot eyes looking at Sun Yan beside me. "I was at the press conference that day. You guys are amazing." He paused, his voice strained. "I always thought before that I needed a genius son to prove myself. I was wrong. I just want to be his dad, can I?" Sun Yan put down his straw and, for the first time, actively turned his tablet towards Gu Yanqing. There was no complex code on the screen, only an extremely simple logic diagram. A box reads, "Sun Yan equals genius." An arrow points to another box, Gu Yanqing requests to establish father-son relationship. Then, a huge red X crosses out the entire logic diagram from the middle. Below is a small footnote, error. Preconditions missing, logical relationship invalid, request rejected. Gu Yanqing's face instantly lost all color. I stood up and picked up Sun Yan's backpack. "Gu Yanqing," I looked at him, my tone without any fluctuation. "In your eyes, a son is a product, a wife is a container, and value is the only measure. Now that you have nothing, wanting to pick up what you threw away. Don't you think it's too late? I took Sun Yan's hand, ready to leave. You're already out of my world.